I wish I could say that The Fall of the House of Usher, the new show on Netflix, was a shallow imitation of Edgar Allan Poe's work. In that case, I might still appreciate certain things about it. I am a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe, definitely a huge influence on me creatively, and his stories still resonate to this day because of their psychological depth, and he was very good at choosing his words carefully, especially on the title story here, The Fall of the House of Usher. That's one of the most detailed stories ever, and it is so precise in its language that it is still studied to this day, and it is such a thorough depiction of a descent into madness that it really resonates with everybody who's read it. It's a very memorable story, and I wish I could say that this particular adaptation was actually an adaptation. I wish I could say that it was just a surface level version of the story, because then you would still find things to appreciate, you get a little spooky vibes going, and then maybe it'll incentivize people to check out the story after. I can still find things to appreciate about it, but honestly, I've only watched about half of this show, but I gotta say my impression of it is that it's really just kind of taking some certain member berries from the Edgar Allan Poe stories and just kind of sprinkling them throughout this completely unrelated story. The horror elements almost feel tacked on to a melodrama about a corrupt family, and it's trying very hard to be topical. It's all about this pharmaceutical family who's on trial for the opioid epidemic, and it mirrors families in real life. And there's so many references to pop culture and all this other stuff. There's a scene that takes place in the 70s, and they're talking about AI writing TV shows. It just feels so shoehorned in. It feels very much like how do you do, fellow kids, trying to keep up with modern times, talking about Billie Eilish and just all these random references. It almost feels like AI told the writer what to reference, or just scouring through social media to kind of get a sense of it. And let's not forget the scene where they sing the lyrics of WAP. Yes, WAP, Megan Thee Stallion, is in this show. Why? I am not really a fan of the show. The basic premise is this frame story where the prosecutor who was prosecuting this family unsuccessfully ends up meeting with the patriarch of the family, and his name is Roderick Usher, and he's recounting the story of how all of his children died. That's the basic premise of the show. And the first episode showed promise, very similar to the director Mike Flanagan's previous show, The Haunting of Hill House, which I really enjoyed that show. I thought it was a very solid ghost story, and even though I found it a little melodramatic, it at least had some heart to it, and I really appreciated the characters, and there's something to relate to. That's not really the case in this story. There aren't any characters that I find likable or interesting. They're all kind of very one note, and weirdly enough, the dialogue sounds interchangeable between all the characters. They kind of speak with one voice, and it's very crass, it's very crude. It's not terribly clever or anything. They all have a bunch of soliloquies, and it just goes on way too long, and they're just ranting about stuff. Some of it's interesting, most of it isn't, and I just wish they would stop talking and the spooky stuff start happening. So there's basically a scary scene towards the end of every episode. The end of episode 2 is definitely very memorable. It's like soul-crushingly horrific. But other than that, most of the horror elements is just like, oh, there's a loud noise, oh, there's a thing, and that's about it. It's not really suspenseful or anything, maybe a couple things here or there, but it lacks any sort of psychological complexity that Edgar Allan Poe had. And like I said, it lacks all of the nuance and substance of those stories. And it doesn't even really have the horror atmosphere to really fall back on. So I'm done with the show. I don't think I'll be finishing it. The show definitely seems much more interested in the pharmaceutical family side of things and this evil empire and these people who spin things in the media, these powerful influencers, and they're all degenerates, addicted to drugs and sex. And I suppose that could be interesting, but it's not really portrayed with any depth. They're all just awful, terrible people doing horrible things to each other and their customers and the world at large, and most of the things that happen are a result of their own choices, so you can't even feel bad for anything that happens. They're all just horrible, horrible people, and I can't stand to watch them. So when bad things start happening to the characters, I'm not really invested, and the horror stuff is really almost an afterthought. There's a couple good scenes here and there, but most of it I just find kind of boring. So I can't really recommend this show. There's this premise planted in the first episode with this trial going on that there is a mole in the family, somebody who's reporting to the feds. And that also seems like an afterthought. And really, that's kind of a MacGuffin. And with the whole frame story of knowing how the story ends, it's not really all that interesting to see it play out because you're not really surprised about these things that happen. Even some of the jump scares kind of telegraph what's going to happen at the end of the episode, so you see it coming the whole time. And maybe it's supposed to put the sense of dread into you, but I just don't find myself invested in it at all. So it's a little disappointing, after being a fan of The Haunting of Hill House, to go into this show, to not really be all that happy with it. So that's my opinion on the show, at least the first half of it that I watched. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.